Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
It's Commander's Horn, episode 105. We're back with a full episode here in 2019 with two fantastic guests, fellow Gwent faction ambassadors and fellow Gwent Masters broadcast team members, the always entertaining Shinmiri and Jaggerous. We'll be talking about the faction battle which went live today, and also about how one small change was so huge for Gwent this week on Commander's Horn. So great to be back in the studio, and good afternoon, my friends. It's January 17th, podcasting in 2019. And we're back here with another weekly Gwent podcast. And even though it hasn't been as weekly as it could have been, we have exactly what you might expect today. Two fantastic guests and a live show on Thursday with not only one but two very relevant Gwent VIPs at this moment and regulars on the podcast. Shinmiri and Jaggerous, how are you, my friends?
Shinmiri?
Oh, Jaggerous.
I'm great.
Thanks
for having us. It's great to be back. I had a huge blast the last time I was on the show. Really looking forward to what we'll be talking about today.
Oh yeah, because some stuff just touched down. Now, Jaggerous, you've already been streaming. First of all, how are you? And how did your stream go, faction battle wise?
Oh, the stream was good. We actually, it's kind of a shame because I started at 12. So then by the time the faction challenge started, I'd already been streaming because it started around 2. So I'd already been playing a little bit. But it was good to kind of get warmed up into things. And yeah, it's great to be back on the talk show. Last time I think we had an episode dedicated specifically to one faction. So it's kind of funny that now we have this whole faction challenge coming back around again. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the faction challenge. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of cool things coming over the next week.
Yeah. I like how it shows who's leading at any given time when you go into the faction battle. You go into the faction challenge page, which is live. You guys can go on into the Gwent client right now. No patch necessary, I believe. You just go in and it should be on your news item. And when you click on it, first of all, you choose your allegiance. And
you click on Nilfgaard, and then that's how you enter the faction.
No. We don't do that. We don't do that yet. Hey, if that's your thing, don't tell people. Don't tell people to do it. Anyway, but then you get to see who's leading it. So it's always got the leaderboard, so you always know you got to fight. And last time I checked, it was monsters, but it was just 8 a.m., like I said. And thanks to Jaggerous, who's coming in 9 hours ahead of Shinmiri for this globally wonderful podcast. It's just really awesome. And also, both of you are previous podcast hosts or have been involved in the podcasting scene at one point or another. So it feels like it's kind of an all-star show right now. Jaggerous, do you miss podcasting a little bit? Do you miss your kind of the live show because you were part of the Gwenelman talk show, the Top Deck talk show, whatever incarnation you want to believe in?
I kind of do miss it. I think it's nice to have that weekly thing where you keep up to date with Gwent or with a subject, and that's kind of what podcasting is all about. And I don't know, I just love sitting and I can talk about anything for a long time. I'm really, really good at talking. That's probably why I'm a Gwent caster.
Wow. These are the kind of guests that I like to have on the podcast, people who like to talk.
I do miss it, but I can understand why the Top Deck talk show ended, and it was good to take a break when Gwent was so kind of quiet. And I imagine it was much harder for you, McBeard, when you were kind of doing the Commander's Horn, even though there wasn't heaps of new stuff coming. Whereas now there's all the new stuff is starting to happen, which is very exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, there was like a holiday drought, and I was really busy. I was tied up from like December 15th to January 4th. It was just really hard to keep up with it. But there wasn't a bunch of news. But from December 7th to the latest patch, I was not very active. But since the latest patch, I've been very active. But before we get into that, though, Shinmiri, just wanted to say, regarding Team Aretuza. So the games, we're in full swing 2019 with a patch that's massive, and we're going to talk about that as well. Just a massive patch that just happened. How is Team Aretuza kind of processing this? You've got to obviously relook at the whole meta. Everything is completely shaken up with the new way of balancing leaders. And how's the talk show going as well on the Team Aretuza side?
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. Team Aretuza definitely trying to take trying to take advantage of the opportunity, releasing new content on our website like every week regarding meta updates. The Aretusa talk show has been on a little bit of a hiatus over the holidays, but we're going to be starting again soon. And we have the Aretusa Academy now, which is awesome. It's a project that we've been working on for a long time, introducing the game to beginners and having like different videos and quizzes and stuff to help people learn the game.
Right on, right on. So still lots going on as well, as Gwent is far from a solved game, as things do continue to keep changing. But I think everybody is okay with this one. This one seems like it's very widespread, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But I just wanted to let everybody know that this episode of Commander's Horn is recorded live on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/McBearded, and will be posted on YouTube, where you can find me at McBeard as well. And Commander's Horn usually records on Thursdays, and we'll return to recording on Thursdays, with start times varying depending on the guest. Like I said, the 9-hour difference between my two guests is a feat of technology. The future has arrived, my friends. It's wonderful.
The technology is finally here.
Technology is finally here. The podcast will be posted on the feed when very, very latest Friday morning, but I highly anticipate this will be live on Thursday. It'll also be on YouTube at youtube.com/c/McBeard. So I feel like I'm still recovering from the holidays. I don't know about you guys. Just like one last thing before we get into the New Year stuff. How did you guys celebrate your holidays? Did you have a good time? Shinmiri, you can go ahead first, because I did not.
Yeah, we went to my family and I. We actually usually we would go back to Chicago to see my parents, but this year we actually met in Las Vegas.
Oh, cool.
And had like a 4 or 5 day vacation in Vegas. Went to the Grand Canyon. Checked that out for a day. It was a lot of fun. Great way to spend the holidays. And the only unfortunate thing is I kind of got sick when I was there, like at the end of the trip, and then I'm still kind of recovering. It's been like almost 2 weeks now. Yeah. And yeah, it's a lot of bugs going around.
Well, I mean, yeah, holidays are like that, and also this is something that I think I personally got from my dad, but I don't know. This happens to hardworking people. As soon as you have time off, it's like your body's like, "Oh, okay, you're not working. We can get sick now. Now it's time for our annual sickness." Jaggerous, what did you get up to on the other side of the pond?
I was in Scotland, which is great,
Oh, nice.
except that I always have to leave behind my computer, so I'm like really limited in terms of technology, which is actually good, because it's good to kind of switch off and step away. But then CD Projekt Red were all like, "Oh, by the way, we're changing how premium cars work, and you have until the 2nd of January to make them out of scrap, or else tough." And I didn't have access to a computer, so I couldn't go and craft a bunch of premiums. So I have 400,000 scrap, just like sitting there waiting to be made into cards. And I'm just like, oh man. But I don't really mind that much. Like, premiums are cool and stuff, but it's all cosmetic, so it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah,
it might be a blessing in disguise after like the 3rd expansion, and you realize, oh man, my straps are actually running low.
Well, I know that's gonna happen to me, because like anytime I felt like I'm just like the richest card boy, I'm just like, a couple of expansions later, time goes on, but time has been kind to the beta people, as we are rich beyond our wildest scrappy dreams. It's time to talk about this fashion ambassadors. I'm glad that that's not actually what it is, as I'm just, perpetually in a sweater.
I would have not been chosen.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Jaggerous, maybe. I don't know. I see those.
Stripes are in.
Yeah, stripes are in. Crazy pink neon hats are in. All right, guys, there's tons of stuff to talk about. So let's talk about some Gwent news here, and more. The patch as well, right after this short break here. All right, my friends, so we are part of the Faction Ambassador program, which has now kind of been finally unfurled and magnified as of 8 a.m. this very morning on Thursday, January 17th. The faction battle has now launched. We have, the Play Gwent has thrown out a really awesome tweet that showcases not just the 3 of us, but also the Monsters faction ambassador, which is Ocean Mud, and the Scoia'tael faction ambassador, which is Sir Pumpkin. Those are your 5, and over the course of a week, 7 full days, including today, I do believe everything will be ending on exactly the same time as it started on Thursday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. CEST. So that's 6 days to get your quest done, 6 days to kind of support your faction and rally your troops and your, all your people. So I'd like to ask both of you here, how have your audiences reacted? Have your audiences, Shinmiri, I'll start with you. Have your audiences been like, oh yes, let's go, Skellige right here. You've been streaming, you've been faction ambassador, kind of like everybody knows that for like the past week or so. So people probably are asking you lots of questions. You're probably playing a lot of Skellige, thinking about how you're going to be tackling this week, because this week you're going to be representing the high seas. How has your audience been reacting to kind of now the fact that you are the Skellige guy, at least for this faction battle?
They've definitely been very excited and supportive of me getting the faction ambassador for Skellige, which is awesome. I think the hype could have even been higher if there were more details regarding the faction challenge released beforehand, because we didn't really know too much exactly how it was going to work, other than you could pick all 5 factions, like one of all 5 factions instead of just one of 2.
Right.
But yeah, it's an awesome event. I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't actually played any Gwent yet because I just got up like an hour ago.
I've been setting up the podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to conquering the Gwent landscape with the hardy Skelligers.
For sure. And Jaggerous, on your side as well, you are the Nilfgaard faction ambassador. And now, I mean, this comes from a casting point of view, both of us. I mean, we play lots of different stuff. I mean, some people thought it was weird that I wasn't the Monsters faction ambassador, since I do love monsters. But of course, when I'm in a conversation with Ocean Mud, that would just Ocean Mud is the monsters guy in any conversation that you're having. So I ended up Northern Realms. I love Northern Realms as well. You love Nilfgaard as well, though maybe not probably the most famous Nilfgaard streamer over the course of Gwent. You are still kind of representing Nilfgaard. So how has that been going for you?
I mean, I think that we are kind of the flex picks when it comes to faction ambassadors. My own personal community, like through YouTube and Twitch, have all been really lovely. But I did expect, because I hadn't been streaming as much in the build up to Christmas, or really at all, that some people would be like, Jaggerous doesn't play Gwent. We had this whole thing where certain people stepped away from Gwent to play other games. And because of that, some people are very defensive of Gwen, which is understandable. If you're passionate about something, you can be very vocal. And because I hadn't really been about, people are like, well, where's Jaggerous been? Is she a traitor? Which I think is actually quite apt, considering I'm now the Nilfgaard faction ambassador.
Traitorous indeed.
But just to clear that up, for anyone who doesn't know, I did post on Reddit and stuff. Basically, I ended up getting kind of depressed. Well, just depressed. It's not even kind of depressed. And I stepped away from content creation to work on my mental health. And I think like content creators can vouch for this, that it can be really hard, always being, on when it comes to streaming and on when it comes to YouTube. And it got to the point when Homecoming came out, I sat down and was trying to make videos, and I was trying to make a deck guide. And I just burst into tears, like, over making a deck, which is ridiculous. But I just got so stressed out and worked up about it that I need to take some time away. And I'm very appreciative of CD Projekt Red for giving me the opportunity with the faction ambassador, because I do realize that, compared to some other streamers, I haven't been about as much, but that doesn't mean that, I stopped playing Gwent at all, or that I don't enjoy Gwent. I'm still very much into Gwent, and it's still something I'm very passionate about. I'm still a caster for Gwent, for example. So this has kind of been a really good opportunity to then jump back into things and be like, hey guys, I know I've been gone, but let's play Nilfgaard. Let's, rock this faction challenge. And it's been really cool to come back to that. And actually, once I kind of tell people about where I've been, everyone has become much more understanding. Like when you're like, oh, well, I had mental health problems, then suddenly people are like, oh, yeah, that's okay.
Well, I find
it's not that you're a traitor to another game.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, that thing you said about being defensive about Gwent, I mean, I get it, right? Like we're very much involved with Gwent, as it's very, very clear in this extreme moment right now, as we're part of an event. We've been part of events. We're on a podcast talking about it. But, Gwent is really kind of like a home team thing. Like, I love Gwent like I love a sports team. I just love them. And when the team is doing well, I am like, yes, I love it. When the team's not doing well, I feel it in my soul. And, we're going to talk about this huge patch, because this huge patch felt like some soul was coming back for sure in large quantities. But I would say that it's too bad to hear that, Jaggerous, that you have been receiving feedback about your presence, especially over the holidays. I mean, that's the time that I would hope people would be the most understanding. But anybody who has anything like that to say to Jaggerous, just want to let you know, I did the same thing. So if you're going to give her a hard time, you're going to give me a hard time, because taking time off, especially around the holidays, was very beneficial for my mental health as well. And it's, it was a long year. We waited, Homecoming came out, and then, other huge impacts to the card game universe also happened. And, it felt like some of our friends were leaving. Like, it's like a real thing. Like, this is kind of like a little bit of inside baseball, sort of like heart and soul stuff. But like, it sucked, it sucked when, people leave. You get to know these people, you meet them in person, even the players. Like, when I hear the players are playing different games, like, these players are so good, they can do well in any game they play. I don't think I have the same, like, I'm confident in a lot of stuff that I do, but to think that I could just go cast another game or do a podcast about another game, like, no, I don't think so. Do you think would I stream another game and be at all? Like, I don't see that. Like, I don't, like, good players, they almost have that freedom because they're so damn good at grinding, playing under pressure, all that stuff. So, like, it's not just like the people I work with, it's the people that I expected to see, and the sudden impact, like, you know what? There's some people that I may have already seen for the last time, especially coming from North America, the Europeans and stuff like that. So there's a lot to take in, and I hope your December reflection was as beneficial. Was beneficial in that way, because just being able to reflect on all that, and then to come in with a very refreshed look at Gwent as of December the 10th? Is that when the patch hit? And we got the change to the mulligans? It was something around that time, I think.
It was about a week ago.
It was like almost exactly.
The mulligans was this month, but last month we had the balance changes.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm just finding out now that Pavko Gale has different voice lines. Like, it's really, I missed a lot over December.
They like to slip stuff like that in there and just, like, don't tell you about it and let the fans find out for themselves.
Yeah. Like, people are still finding Priscilla's Easter egg, right?
Yeah. In some ways, I almost feel like it was really good because I missed the kind of growing pains of Homecoming. I came back just as this new Mulligan update hit us. So I just come in, I'm just like, this is great. I don't know why everyone was so upset.
I mean,
it was actually a great time to come back. The first month was a little bit of a struggle, I have to admit, but it's definitely looking way better now, and the future, the horizon, everything's looking very good and pretty much just upside from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks really good. Before we talk about the Mulligan change, which is going to be kind of our strategy thing, just as far as like the faction battle, it's like a big deal. Because it just happened. Like I said, I haven't even started. You represent your faction by choosing a faction and completing quests. Now, the thing about the faction battle is that we're going to, the respective factions, the popularity of the factions also like really matters. There's faction popularity and strength level, how it's perceived. Although I feel like the meta is in a very cool spot personally. How do you feel about Skellige right now, Shinmiri?
I am loving Skellige. I think it's one of the strongest factions right now. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Well, no, there's some serious stuff coming out with Harold.
It has a lot of versatility. I think like pretty much at least 3 of the 4 leaders in Skellige have competitive decks. Mm-hmm. That would be like Herald, Iced, and Croc. I think Cran's struggling a little bit just because Skellige already has enough consistency. But I'm really happy to represent Skellige because it's been my favorite faction since open beta. People know me like way back when I first started streaming. I was focused on veterans in open beta Gwent, and I love Skellige, and I really like their theme as well. So I'm really happy to represent Skellige. I think they have a pretty good chance of winning.
I think that Skellige has some pretty cool stuff coming out. Herald is starting to feel more and more like Woodland, where it's all about that last play huge bomb thing with Dagger. And Kraka has some cool stuff out there just because of always being able to, like, you always can use Geralt Professional. You've got the constant ping long rounds of your friend, and you can work with that. And Iced, of course, has that Yetta last play with Beckers. It's kind of similar to Herald, but it's just different cards and different ways to do it. Bran, like, I thought Bran was going to be okay because I thought that because you don't need all the cards that do discard, like maybe like Darren or Berna or something like that, that you just have actually more provisions than it appears. But it seems like that's not as important as it is to actually using those cards, Darren and Berna. Why do you think Bran, like, do you think that there's some untapped potential in Bran? I haven't like really explored it, so I'm actually coming from it. This is a genuine question, viewer question, Shinmiri.
Perhaps I actually haven't like tried out Bran that much, but I think there might be potential there with like a more discard focused with Coral and the Brockvar Hunters, just like something that takes advantage of focusing on discard rather than going for just like the standard value plays like Unicorn, Chironex, that sort of stuff. So maybe, but it's going to be a little bit synergy dependent, and that's kind of a little bit vulnerable in the meta right now with all the removals and locks.
Right on. Now, speaking of locks, Jaggerous, let's talk about Nilfgaard a little bit. Nilfgaard has, it's so strange that I find that Nilfgaard, like one of the least popular leaders right now is Calvet, who has the, not only does he have the ability to basically, like, or not basically, literally play 2 cards in a turn, which I seemed like at all times that ability was going to be one of the best abilities in the game. But also, it's the same ability that it's the same ability that he had in previous Gwent, where he was able to play the top card or play one of the top cards off the top of the deck, which you can structure and seems very good. And if in a world where Woodland and Herald is very good, I find it strange that Calvet is lower played than Usurper, Emir, and Morvran for sure.
I think it makes sense when you look at what Emir does, because Emir also lets you play 2 cards in one turn, because you obviously pick one up and you play one, and then you play one. True. You also can play one from hand. But Emir lets you replay a card. So instead of looking at the top 3 and maybe getting a selection of bronzes, you more or less are guaranteed to be playing a gold card twice. Yeah. And I think you have to consider that value in Emir. Emir has insane value because of some of the deploy effects and whatnot of the gold cards. You know, you can play a Chironex twice with Unicorn in hand. You could play Unicorn twice. You can play Seret twice. You can play Orcs twice. You can play Peter twice and reset 2 cards. You know.
Yeah, even Shoot twice is the big one. That's a big one. Twice. Yeah.
Today I was playing around with a strategy with Menno where I try and play Commander's Horn actually twice.
Hey, that's about time that card is relevant again.
Yeah, using Menno and what's she called? Asir to put the Commander's Horn back into the deck so that you can again play it twice. So I think when you compare Calvet to Emir, he just doesn't. They're similar, but Emir just I think has the edge. And then other than that, if you're going for a reveal strategy, you're going to go for Morvran, and if you hate leaders in general, then you're going to go Usurper. So I feel like Calvet is lacking a niche. Calvet has a niche that Emir already fills. But with that said, I think Nilfgaard is just popular thematically. I think there's a lot of people from old Gwent, closed beta Gwent, open beta Gwent, who really loved Nilfgaard, and they've kind of kept that loyalty through, even though I think currently Nilfgaard is in a bit of a weird position because you kind of build a base set that contains more or less the same bronzes, like Magni divisions and that sort of thing, and then you go to your golds and you put in like Roach and Asir, then you put in the Witcher trio, then you put in Chironex and Unicorn because they're just really, really good cards. And you've kind of built a core that's predominantly actually neutral with Asir in there to replay Roach. And then if you go Orcs and Seret, you know, there's not, I feel like it's lacking a little bit of identity at the moment.
Especially considering the strong stuff like how it used to be with Spies. Spies was such a huge identity. Alchemy was a huge identity, and both of those things are soldiers. Now, soldiers at least I feel like is represented in that there are good cards that revolve around soldiers, like Vreem Slave Infantry. The Spearmen aren't even that bad. Pikemen.
Hefty Helga got buffed.
Hefty Helga got buffed and was always immune. And I mean, immune cards, I always have my eye on those cards. They're scary. But it seems like their bronze core, the cards that are strong are standouts, and neutrals are very strong right now. Now, Chironex and Unicorn is that's like I'm happy. It's like a good news, bad news. I'm happy that this feels like the biggest problem because it doesn't feel like a huge problem like Consume used to feel like
Sahil,
like Sahil or Sabbath used to feel like. It feels like I'm annoyed by it, but I'm not like losing a ton of games specifically because of it. It's like I don't feel this hatred for those cards. It's not the same. They
don't make me want to slam the desk and quit the game.
Yeah, it's just that's just how it is. Yeah.
But would you not say that that's just because everyone has access to them, so it's an even playing field? Like you probably also are playing them, so then it doesn't feel as bad. Whereas if you don't really play Scoia'tael and you keep getting Shirud, I think that feels worse because it's certain situations where it doesn't feel like there's anything that you could really do. I will say though that having something like a Chironex and a Unicorn in the neutrals, I think is quite good for newer players because when they're like, "What should I craft?" You're like, "Well, craft Chironex and Unicorn because you can just slam them in any deck and it's going to be decent value." You know, so having some strong neutral cards I think is worthwhile, but you need to be careful. What I would say.
I want to talk more about this. This is kind of a good segue to what I want to continue talking about, and that's the Mulligan Change and how decks feel now and how basically everything feels now, because everything feels just a little bit or a lot a bit different. But before we move on to that, based on the meta, the strength level of the decks, what you've been seeing on the ladder, etc., what you've been playing, and the community and how the community tends to latch on to very strong decks, whereas the meta, I feel like, there's fair representation. I think maybe I didn't even talk about Northern Realms, but I feel like Northern Realms is, a lot of people ask me about how I feel about the power level of Northern Realms. You, Shinmiri, have said that you've had difficulty climbing with Northern Realms on the pro ladder, which of course is a different environment than under the pro ladder. So there is that at least, but that does still suggest that control is good enough and Northern Realms doesn't have enough, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess I want to say action cards, but that's not ever a term that I've ever used before. But it's a card that, you can play for a bigger swing that doesn't involve setup, and you're not so vulnerable to removal, especially with Unicorn Kyrenex being around. Like, the reason why I think Unicorn Kyrenex is more powerful than something else that was neutral and very powerful in the past, which is the Witchers, is just because of how strong it is to remove, how strong it is in the meta to have maybe the tallest unit, or being able to boost something back up that's about to die, or kill something that's been protected by tactical advantage. It's way, way up there. You have like this cool sort of flexibility where you can only have one of those things. You can't have the other. The other one is whatever. The other one is like just average, and the other one is like super good. So
you're wrong, McBeard. You play Nilfgaard, then you play Bribery, and you get one of them and play it. Then you play Emir, pick it up and play it again.
Oh, you know what?
Then you play the ones from your hands, and then everyone is just like, wow.
And then you also play Hand Marvin's Blue Dream to play a total of 4 unicorns in one game.
And it's fabulous.
Oh God. Feels, I don't know if that sounds like I've been following a lot of card games over my time, and there are decks out there that get complained about a lot but not seen a lot, but when it happens, like Nilfgaard, I guess, is a good example of like the past, where the deck, when you see it, it's like, oh no, it's going to be that game that I hate, but I'm only going to see it once every maybe 20 or 30 games. That sounds like a game that just like, oh man, I'm on a win streak, I'm on peak, this is great, 4 unicorns. Oh man, I want to talk a little bit more about this. We're just going to cut right to the strategy section here. So we're going to sit down at the table and talk strategy with our faction ambassadors right now.
Maybe not today and not tomorrow, but someday someone will find a way to take you down.
All right, so a huge change came to Gwent 1 week ago today. So we've had a week to expand upon it, and this is such a huge change. Personally, it's been just in case you are a returning player, and it feels like there's a lot of these people, especially anybody who follows. Freddie Babes is a really popular YouTuber in the world right now, considering kind of the shift in people who are putting videos out there. Freddie Babes stuck with the game, really great player, and has been offering a number of opinion videos as well. And his reaction was very, very strong. So I think a lot of people took, I see the views that he gets right there, and I know that he's one of the top streamers as well when he's live. He commands a lot of opinion, I think, early on in the morning, if you're looking at kind of like the daily trends you might see. So his opinion, while it is one person's opinion, is a good opinion, as he is the most recent champion and the Gwent Challenger 2 champion, and we're going to see him again in Gwent competition. So he likes it. So that was a good start. Like, that's kind of like when I first, because I hadn't really dove in as much, but I was starting to see the opinions, and I was starting to see the opinions flood in on Discord. So, but if you have missed it, all leaders, 2 mulligans every round. Extra mulligans if you have blue coin, extra mulligans if you overdraw past the hand limit, you no longer discard. Now, leaders give you an upgrade to your maximum recruit cost, which is standardized at 150 plus leader, Usurper being on the lowest end at 10, making a maximum 160 provision cost deck, Ethna being on, oh, my voice cracked there, Ethna being on the highest end with 19 for 169 total, which is really only 4 higher than the old limits, but she actually has that like extra luxury. And just straight up, full transparency, the magnitude of this simple change just surprised me. I knew it was going to be good, and I did a podcast right after the dev stream that talked about it, but I did not think that people would be just coming in droves saying, man, Gwent feels like back. Like matchups feel better. Thinning feels better. Techs feel better. I didn't realize how much I missed it. I thought things were okay and I just had to adjust. You know, December didn't feel good. The game didn't feel good, right? It feels so good right now. Shinmiri, how do you feel about this change?
Yeah, I think it's a really deceptive change. It's like when Homecoming first came out and they had so many changes and the mulligan was one of them, and they went into this system where you carried all the mulligans over. I don't think most people realized at that time how much that changed things and how bad it feels to get punished because you drew an unlucky hand at the start of round one. Let's say you play Witchers in your deck and you draw 3 Witchers in the start of round one. You have to use 2 mulligans for basically nothing. And you don't have them anymore for round 3 to improve your consistency. And certain leaders just were unplayable because they had too few mulligans and they didn't have enough consistency to run the game plan and run the deck that you wanted. Now all the leaders have the same amount of consistency and it's only different from their power level, which I think is way easier for CDPR to balance as well. So I'm really happy about this change. The game feels really good to me. I feel like when you build a deck now, you can reliably assume that you're going to get most of your win conditions over the course of the game with 6 or 7 mulligans.
Yeah, like you don't have to include 2 bronzes because you just are super worried that you're not going to see it, or like you just like, or you don't have to worry about, like, look at Ancre Marauder, for example. Like that card, that card is causing a little bit of a stir. It's a very strong
that card has its own issues.
Yeah, it has its own issues, but you know, before the mulligan change, like that card is, you know, it's always had that power level, but it didn't feel like it was great because sometimes you couldn't get rid of it, and sometimes you couldn't control like if you drew it or not. But you can put 2 in the deck now, knowing that you can mulligan in round 3 to get rid of it or something, or you don't ever need to play 2. Or if you don't have the spear, you can find it. You don't have to worry about not having, you know, anything on the board. It just made that card got better when hand consistency in round 1, or any round that you have spear and you're going first, got. It improved the consistency of death. Well, I mean, everything. I mean, it's really hard for me to like zero in because I haven't even played every deck that's good or even half good at this point. I played a lot of Northern Realms and some monsters. That's pretty much it. And I have felt the change. Like I used to play Hensel at the 2 mulligans, miserable leader to have no mulligans for. And I'm not even just saying like increasing it to 3 made Hensel feel better. It didn't ever feel better because there was always something I felt like I had to get rid of with Hensel, and round 3 suffered for it.
It's a great example. Like if you want to Hensel Kidwani Knights, you don't want to do them in round 1. You got to keep them in your deck at all the way until round 3. So if you mulligan them away in round 1, you might just draw back into them in round 2 or round 3, and then you're like, what did I mulligan for? And now you have, you know, additional mulligans every round.
Yeah, and don't forget about actually being able to mulligan in round 2 and not feel like, oh man, I'm stupid. That's the thing I'm supposed to never, ever, ever do is mulligan in round 2. Because I'm just going to get those cards back, or I just wasted my mulligan. So it just actually feels like you have this extra space to fix your hand or actually prepare for a push. Jaggerous, how have you been enjoying the mulligan change?
I think that overall, like, so Gwent has always been about kind of strategy. And before Homecoming, the game was in such a state where you could very, very consistently play your strategy. So you'd build a deck and you would play your strategy. And most of the time, you could pretty much try and at least play your strategy unless your opponent interferes. Whereas with Homecoming, because of how they changed the mulligans, it really felt like half the time you couldn't even play the strategy that you'd built the deck to play. Like, you're like, oh, I've got these cards that interact. But most of the time, I don't even see this one of these cards. So what's the point? Whereas this change, I think, has made Gwent feel more like Gwent. And that's why people are very happy, I myself included. I do think that the game feels better. And I don't think that it's like too much consistency because they've taken out a lot of tutors. You know, you don't have that situation other than if you're playing maybe a discard deck where you consistently thin your entire deck. But you can typically with the mulligans play the cards that you need. You can afford to say put artifact removal into your deck without it costing you, because you can throw it away if it happens to be, oh, I don't think my opponent's going to be playing artifacts. But whereas previously, if you put artifact removal in your deck, if you went up against a non-artifact deck, tough luck, you're at a disadvantage. If you don't put artifact removal in your deck, if you went up against an artifact deck, tough luck, you're at a disadvantage. Like, now it feels like you can put those tech cards in, and even if they're not necessary for the matchup, that's okay because you can always mulligan them.
Yeah,
I love it. I think it's great.
On day one, everybody had a bomb heaver in their hand. Like, it was just, I couldn't, because I was trying to play like Bloody Flail with them event, but I felt like if I didn't have like a blocker artifact before that, somebody had it, because it was almost like risk free to include it. Well, there's some slight risk. You have a card that's below average if there's no artifacts, but if you feel like you can find that card, or, you know, with extra mulligans, you are much more likely to find it. So there's that. There's the tech side, but something else that I really like is we're talking about something I've seen a lot of in you know, I've been watching some videos, I've been playing around, I've seen Commander's Horn. Now, Commander's Horn is a very expensive card, and it was hard to include expensive cards, because if you didn't find them, and if you built your whole deck around kind of budgeting to include the expensive cards, and then you didn't draw them or have a way to, you know, reliably see them, it felt terrible because your deck was just much weaker in response. So, I mean, I think that, yeah, and the thinning is also better too. Thinning is also like more important, because it means that when you can mulligan in round 3, you're more likely to mulligan into the cards you want. So here's my question: with thinning better, I see Witchers a lot, but I feel like they're not the strongest neutral or the most common neutral. I think that the Unicorn Karnaks are now bigger and better than the Witchers are. In a world where thinning seems better than ever, what is it exactly about Unicorn Karnaks? Although Shinmiri just painted a gross picture of 4 unicorns, but maybe outside of that combo that scares me, that I'm going to play maybe later. What is it about the Unicorn Karnaks that makes them feel stronger than maybe the Witchers as far as benefit added to the deck?
I think you talked about it before a little bit, is that the removal option from the Karnaks, the big removal option that deals 8 damage, that's hard to find anywhere else. Like, what kind of answers do you have if, like, Northern Realm's opponent just slams Avalok on an empty board, right? And they're going first.
Yeah. Like,
they're threatening to get that Visagoda engine online, and you can't do anything about it. You've got a couple answers. You've got, like, Karnaks, maybe Geralt Professional if they don't, like, decide to buff it up with something to offset the 6 power, and you've got a lock, but you might not draw your lock. Your Karnaks Unicorn's always good, even if you don't find that removal target, but it's extra good if you do need it for that removal.
Yeah, like, it's I just totally brain farted on it. Generally, though, I feel like removal is still very, very good. I feel like in the removal meta that we're in right now, it does feel like a bit more like there's a combat to Gwent that maybe, you know, I feel like looking back on Gwent, vintage Gwent, it was just, you know, there's like 17 things on the board, and they all have different numbers, and removal is either mass removal or mass value damage, but not quite the controlling nature that is required, because the engines are stronger, but control is more prevalent. So we have a game that it feels like you can't always do anything. Avalok becoming very, very strong is a huge thing. What I was going to say is that 6 as a body is really damn good, because 6 is safe because it's just a high outside of ping threshold. You need something premium to remove it. You can boost it to 7 with little effort depending on what you're playing, which is the safest number, because you're under Geralt of Rivia or Ek or Leo threshold, but you're you're still that much stronger. It's like 7 is the safest place to be. Anyway, that's just something I was thinking about. Just, 6 strength body is huge. Avalok is huge. Jaggerous, what do you think? Now, you're saying that you're also playing with Unicorn Karnaks. Are you finding that the thinning is helping you have more successful round 3s? Like, do you remember where, like, I was frustrated in round 3s a lot, not just because I was losing games, but because I felt like I had so little control over it. Have you felt like the consistency has gone up? You're talking about that sweet spot, not too consistent, but better. Yeah. I feel like they got it. Like, they're so close if they're not already there.
Yeah, I think that the place where the game is pretty good, to be honest. And I think the consistency in regards to Unicorn and Karnaks has definitely helped, because you tend to be better at finding your parts. In regards to comparing them to the Witchers, I think, well, first and foremost, just Unicorn on its own is worth 8 points, whereas Witchers are worth 9, unless you have Roach, in which case you had 3. But, you know, you could play Roach with a Unicorn if you wanted.
More horses is always better.
Value-wise, they're very similar. But the thing is, you never are going to be unhappy if you draw a Unicorn or a Karnaks. Whereas you can be unhappy when you draw a Witcher if it's an extra Witcher.
Mm-hmm.
So you're never going to be like, oh, I'm going to mulligan my Unicorn, I'm going to mulligan my Kyrenex. That just doesn't happen. So not only are they strong neutral cards, they're strong neutral cards which don't require mulligan consideration, which I think makes them extra strong.
Yeah.
But in regards to where Gwent is, yeah, I think the consistency does make them more powerful than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And having 8 points of removal, 8 points of boosting, plus a 4-point body is quite strong.
Mm-hmm.
But I still don't feel like they're oppressive, because sometimes with Kyrenex, there's just not, they don't play anything big, right? And then I don't want to necessarily use Unicorn for an 8-point boost in case they have something that kills tall units. Like, I usually prefer to use the 8-point removal rather than the 8-point boost. But then sometimes you just have to play the boost, and then you can get yourself reset because they haven't played anything tall. Like there's certain decks which obviously play lots of 4s and 3s and 5s. Skellige, I think, is quite common that they play a lot of short units usually. Whereas Monsters obviously is like, it's great, you just kill all their big stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Or
no, Jaggerous makes a really good point. Like Unicorns, people say they're 20 points for 18 provisions or whatever. They're almost never 20 actual points.
Mm-hmm.
They like the Unicorn buff, if you take it first, it's going to get reset or removed by something anti-tall. And if you want to go the safe route and play Kyrenex first, sometimes you're just killing a 6, like an Asir with Kyrenex. So they actually might be a little overrated. Like they're in like almost 100% of decks right now that they're probably overplayed, I think.
I mean, I think
bribery.
if their numbers, yeah, bribery.
I mean, if you don't play Unicorns, you make your opponent's bribery worse.
Shinmiri, we could talk about this. Shinmiri posted a scientifically and statistically backed research paper on Reddit all about the benefits on why bribery is likely a better card than you think it is. So I'll put that in the show notes when I post that. You're gonna have to.
What's that card, the Monsters card that destroys all the ones and then boosts itself by 2?
Glusty
What's he
Warp.
called?
Glusty Warp?
Glusty Warp. I was playing against an Arrakis Queen deck today, and I briberied a Glusty Warp and then killed all of his little Arrakis drones.
God, that's crazy.
My side of the board. And he had about 8, so he lost 8 points. I gained 16 plus Glusty Warp space, and I was just dying of laughter. I was just like, well, Shinmiri was right.
There's a clip. I had to go back and try to find it, and I couldn't find it. But there is a day where I was getting briberied a lot. It was a while ago. Maybe it was even like last Friday, but I just said, it's always Selkirk. It's always Selkirk. And it was Selkirk in that moment. And it was Selkirk like every other time it was played against me. It just seemed like, not confirmation bias, that Selkirk was the best card in my deck, and my opponent could consistently find that card somehow. So
at least they can't zeal it, right?
Yeah, that's the good thing about Northern Realms, is that the best cards that, if I'm not playing Unicorn Kyrenex, let's say, the cards that they get from bribery, or Hand Marvin's Blue Dream, which is also kind of seeing spikes in popularity. The cards that they can take from me like if I'm playing full test, I'm playing these cards that are better specifically for me. So there's that kind of backup if you're getting sick of those cards. Play full test. Yeah, Northern Realms. Go Northern Realms.
It's also a tactic that is bribery, so you can use it with Menno. Like if you're doing a Commander's Horn deck, I call the deck Horny Amir, which I thought was great. But if you're going for that kind of tactic deck, it actually slots in nicely, so you don't ever end up with like a dead Menno. Because if you happen to play the Commander's Horn, you could always use it to pull bribery instead, or you can double play bribery and stuff. So I think actually it's a really good card. I've been playing around with it. Occasionally, you don't get the value from it. It just depends what happens with the draw, but I agree. I think overall it's a solid inclusion.
I think that I think it's like the tactics based cards. That's my next thing. Like for Usurper, I'm gonna try something tactics based with Usurper, because it seems like there's something there. It doesn't seem like 160 is all that bad, considering you don't have to deal with leader reach. Which when you look at like Herald or Woodland or any one use leader, you see like the win con is usually based around getting last play with that leader. So being able to like know that you never will lose that way is very empowering, I would say. However, the effect that Usurper has on the game is always going to be polarizing. So just kind of a Nilfgaardy question for Jaggerous. How do you feel generally about Usurper these days? Because opinions seem to change here and there.
I think like now you have more mulligans, he's probably fine, right? Because I guess previously if you didn't have your leader, which is like often a core component of your strategy, and then you also only had like a couple mulligans, then you can't really fix your hand to have like a competitive hand, that it can feel even more. That's where it feels really oppressive.
But the ability, though, like, do you think the ability is safe? Like, do you think that we, it's okay to live in a world where usurper is there?
Yeah, I think it keeps leaders in check, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Is like, it stops any one leader from becoming too powerful. Because if CDPR accidentally releases a super OP leader, everyone will just stop playing usurper. And then once everyone starts playing usurper and people stop playing that, it kind of keeps this cycle going, and it keeps the meta shifting.
My little issue with it.
I don't get why people hate him that much.
It's like a self-meta balancing mechanism, right?
Yeah.
I think it's okay. And what do you guys think about the range of provisions for the leaders? We're currently 160 to 169. Do you think that's a good range? Do you think it should be wider, narrower?
It's hard to say, just because of how little time we've had to to feel out any system that we've had.
Mm-hmm.
There's the idea that bronzes they go too low for what they do. There's also the idea that there's enough strong neutral cards that sometimes it doesn't really matter on the low end. Like if you look at Skellige, you can discard all those cards anyway. It doesn't really matter like how much you do. So there's different stuff at play, not just the caps, not just what the leaders are adding, but also what the deck can benefit from based on the leader and the faction. So there's so much happening there. I'm not quite sure. But what I will say about Usurper is that the only problem I have with Usurper is that I can't imagine them ever making another passive leader because of how Erica's Queen suffers, in that it's all the leader has. So when you have a leader like Erica's Queen, who also has a lower provision cost, second lowest to Usurper, if you had any other leader that had a passive ability, Usurper now is automatically a good matchup all the time for that leader. Is that like, are we okay with there never being another passive leader? Or are we okay with a world where passive leaders are always going to be vulnerable to Usurper? It's kind of like just kind of an on-the-fly discussion topic that I just want to hit before we wrap things up.
I don't think Arrakis Queen isn't played because of Usurper.
I also don't think that, but I do think that passive leaders will always suffer in a world where a leader always beats that leader, no matter what they do.
But he stops all leaders. I don't quite follow why you think that passive leaders are instantly, like, every leader gets countered by Usurper, but the difference is the Usurper also then has low points and you don't have a leader.
I mean, I was thinking about it. The way I see it is that it's when you have a passive ability, almost everything you build has to kind of work with it. Whereas you look at Full Test, the Full Test kind of only needs like a couple of pieces, whereas Erica's Queen needs to. Well, I guess it was more about when you couldn't mulligan. Erica's Queen, I mean, obviously suffers for a number of other reasons, just because the power level compared to other monster leaders is just not really. It's just not really there. It's kind of the same thing like Calvet. Like, it's not a bad ability. It's just not really in line with what is showing itself to be strong. Perhaps they were too safe with Erica's Queen.
I think rather than... I think it's not because it's a passive ability, but it's more like when you look at Erica's Queen, the potential of the leader power is really high. So they have to compensate elsewhere by making the provision power really low. Because the potential of the leader power is so high, it hurts the most when it gets canceled out by Usurper. So it's not about it being passive or not. If you had an active leader ability that could potentially get you like 20 points and your leader provision is 160 because of that, then that's going to hurt the most when you face it against Usurper as well. So I think it's more about how much of your total power is concentrated in your leader.
Yeah. And there's also, I don't know why. I must have had... I'll just say that I feel like I can't better explain the question because in my mind I had some sort of solution to it. Like it felt like it was a bigger issue. And now I feel like I can't defend myself.
I would be interested to see another passive leader ability.
They seem like the coolest leaders. Yeah, they seem like the coolest leaders. Like they could, like Brand's kind of, like Bran in a situation where we feel like Bran is maybe underpowered. He's like half and half, right? Like he gets a benefit every time something is discarded, but at the same time he has an active ability as well. So I mean,
I think we'll have a better idea.
I'm just gonna backpedal out of this conversation because
I think we'll have a better idea about how Usurper fits into the whole leader puzzle once we find out about the new leaders. Which are
do you think one of the new leaders will have a passive ability?
Yeah. Dane,
Well,
what do you think?
The only thing that I know is that Jason Slama on the stream suggested that perhaps traps needed more support. So that's the only thing that I feel like I can make any true assumption to, that Scoia'tael is going to get some sort of support for traps. So is it possible that all traps that flip could possibly be more strong? Like, you could say, like, that doesn't necessarily seem that crazy if you're building a leader around traps.
Only last thing I want to say about leaders. The one thing that bugs me, someone pointed out to me, every card in Gwent has provisions that are deck cost, whereas leaders, their provisions aren't their cost for their deck, it's extra provisions, and that feels backwards. Like, why don't they cost provisions rather than giving you provisions?
Well, that could, I mean, it makes the same, you make the same argument, I guess. You just make Usurper more expensive, and in this case, Ethna the least expensive, I suppose.
Yeah, but
the icon's different. The icon's different.
You keep people building a deck, and they're like, "Oh, everything costs provisions. Oh, I'm going to change my leader. Oh, that's giving me extra provisions." It's just a little bit backwards, but it's not. Yeah. It's not. It's
kind of like you are the leader. You're not recruiting the leader. You are the leader, and your command brings in the army. That's the only flavor.
It's the morale boost.
Yeah, it's like the morale boost. No one really likes the usurper, so the army's smaller because it's like, ooh, he just took the throne. That's not cool.
I may have read somewhere from that someone from CDPR said they didn't want to cap what the maximum number of provisions a deck could have would be for the future, and they'd rather cap the minimum instead or something like that.
Less restriction.
That makes sense.
Less restrictions are always good. And even in I guess maybe as the final point here, as we are now at the hour, and we're going to wrap things up, my friends, as we will be getting on with our day. I will say that the changes feel mostly with the change to the mulligans. I was so worried about the hour, I actually forgot what I was going to say. That's twice I did that on this podcast. Oh well, maybe it'll come back to me after we take this break here, because we're just going to wrap up here. People in the chat, now we know I'm representing Northern Realms here. We have Shinmiri representing Skellige. We have Jaggerous representing Nilfgaard. And of course, Ocean Mud representing monsters, and Sir Pumpkin representing Scoia'tael. Everybody just yell it out in the chat. Who are you supporting? And we're kind of see like where the fans are. We're going to maybe gauge to see where things are going to go right after this wrap up break here. Once again, we'd like to thank all of our commandos. Our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Also, would like to welcome the newest commando, Keith K. Thanks so much for supporting the podcast. And the thing I was going to say that I brain farted on was about the tempered approach that they took to changes, in that they only changed a couple of things, but they didn't change like hand limit, didn't change draws, didn't change. It was just really the mulligan and Sihil. And there's still room to play with it, but they wanted to see how much of a better place Gwen could be in maybe with just this change. And I hope that they are pleased with the results. I think that's just kind of where I wanted to close it on that one. And I'm pleased with the results. I would like to see no further changes until new cards are added, personally. How do you guys feel about any further changes as the last question?
I'm on the same page as you. I'm pretty happy with the results, and I really love that they're taking it one piece at a time rather than trying to reinvent the wheel all at the same time. So that's kind of what happened with like Midwinter patch and the Homecoming original, like the original Homecoming expansion. Mm-hmm. So much stuff changed at once, and it's harder to manage, and it's harder when there is a problem. It's harder to pinpoint which part is the source of the problem because so many things have changed.
Yeah, it's yeah, absolutely. It's hard to fix. It's hard to fix everything all the time. And the way Midwinter came in, it's like, we're going to change all this stuff and maybe we'll balance it from here. But it seemed like they were thinking, well, instead of doing that, let's try again. So then they did Homecoming. It's like, here's the new game. Now let's balance it from here. And the first, well, I mean, the balancing patches have all been well received, but this one was just huge for the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think the iterative way that they've done it has managed to build a really stable foundation now for Homecoming. And And I think the game's in a pretty good state at the moment. I'm really excited for more cards. I'm kind of also scared because obviously we're talking about small changes and then we're going to have like 100 new cards. So it's going to be a bit all over the shop. But I think that Gwent is on the up. I think the game is in a really good spot. And I'm really excited to see where things go from here.
Yeah, and it's going to start with new leaders later this month. So next week, I'm going to try to get the other two faction ambassadors, Ocean Mud and Sir Pumpkin, on the show. So there's that, because then we'll be talking about the end of the faction battle. We'll know who won. Maybe I'll be talking to one of the champions. Maybe one of the champions is on the show today. Maybe he's on both shows. Wink, wink. So there's that. There's that. So podcast will be, I mean, I'm expecting to do this again on Thursday in case anybody is curious. So there's that. And hopefully we'll see kind of... once new leaders come in, and then maybe like bad cards should be enhanced by new cards. Good cards, maybe Unicorn Carnex go down to 3, doubled to 6. Who knows? We'll see. But however it goes, I'm enjoying playing Gwen right now. I'm going to enjoy playing a little bit of Gwen for the realms right after this podcast, because we have some quests to complete, my friends, so don't go anywhere after this. And the chat is mixed. I will say the chat is absolutely mixed. We have Jamoni screaming out Alba. Hello there. Is looking for monsters. Got Bloomlight on my side for Northern Realms. Nomic, and of course Gulo, of course. Galcio for Skellige's Glory. We have any no one saying Scoia'tael XYZ10. Very, very low representation for Scoia'tael in the chat right here.
Yeah, the Scoia'tael people are busy playing the game.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It's good to see a variety of supporters out there. And I think the great thing about this faction challenge is regardless of which faction you want to support, you can support that faction without feeling punished for picking the one that you enjoy, because the rewards, you get the rewards just for playing the faction that you choose. And the winner of the faction challenge, those rewards are applied to everybody. Like everybody has a chance to enjoy them and take advantage of them. It's not, you don't have to pick the winning faction in order to get the rewards, which was a problem before, where people would just like wait to see who was winning and then like jump on the bandwagon.
It's also cool that you can see out of the 5 factions who's winning, which is more interesting than the 2 factions, because it is a very pure look into play rate. It is a pure play rate look at that we have. I mean, not that pure. We don't know what the percentage is. We don't know how close it is. It just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you know that more people are playing monsters out there, so maybe I can make some decisions about how I want to play, knowing that monsters is huge.
The anti-tech, huh?
Yeah, the anti-tech.
Anti-monsters tech.
You get that information.
Is it not based on how many quests each faction completes?
Yes. Yeah, but it still kind of shows popularity. So at least you could know what faction is more popular. At least today, it's going to be clearer. I guess later on, maybe all the Monsters players are playing today, but they won't play tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll finish the quest, and then they'll start playing someone else, and then you'll be bamboozled, McBeard.
I don't know. Well, I'm playing Monsters, and I'm playing Northern Realms. That's no secret. I'm playing Northern Realms all day long, so maybe I just need some Scorches or something else. Igni. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Shinmiri, you're starting your stream a little bit later today, if not immediately after this podcast. Where can people find you on that podcast if people want to support Skellige and the mighty Jarls that lie in the
I stream on twitch.tv/Shinmiri2, number 2 at the end, and I start weekdays at around 7 p.m. CET, 10 a.m. Pacific.
Right on.
And on Twitter, Shinmiri2 as well. Follow me on Twitter.
Follow your Jarl. There's a higher thing there. I forget what it is. King? It's just King. Follow your King of Skellige here, Shinmiri and Jaggerous, if people want to support the mighty Empire of Nilfgaard who praise the great sun on a daily basis. Where can people find you?
I'm really easy to find because it's Jaggerous everywhere. So twitch.tv/Jaggerous for the stream, youtube.com/Jaggerous for the YouTube. Like I said, I'm kind of easing back into content creation after having my hiatus. So I aim to stream Monday to Friday from about midday. It's a bit flexible at the moment because I have some other projects happening. And I aim to do at least 3 days a week at the moment because I'm just, like I said, working on mental health. So we're easing back into things. On Twitter, though, @Jaggerous. And you should definitely follow me because there may be something interesting happening in about 23 minutes on my Twitter.
23 minutes, you say? Well, that is interesting.
Also,
live.
Instagram @Jaggerous because I'm trying to be better at using Instagram. So I'm gonna be the photo person and shill that too. But yeah, that's everything.
Well, that's pretty cool. So Jaggerous is just leaking that there's something happening in 23 to 22 minutes on your Twitter. Well, I don't know. That seems pretty interesting. Maybe you guys want to check that out. It might be, Who knows what it'll be? No leaks. No leaks from me, my friends. Guys, thanks so much for coming on the show. You guys can find me, of course, at McBeardCH on Twitter, McBearded on Twitch, where you're currently watching this program, or you're watching it on YouTube at youtube.com/C/McBeard. And we'll wrap this up here. Tweet at the podcast at any time at Commander's Horn. Send your emails to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com. Really, thanks so much for coming on the show, Shinmiri and Jaggerous. Really appreciate your time. And I'll be talking to the other faction leaders, hopefully, faction ambassadors, hopefully next week. And I'll have news about that soon. But Jaggerous, hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Shinmiri, hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon and or morning. And I will be enjoying the rest of my afternoon. So thanks again so much for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's been great.
And thanks to everybody in the chat. Until next time, this is McBeard. Best of luck on the path.